36 degrees, snowing out, roads are getting a little nasty. Yeah. It's gonna be a cold one. Hour and a half home, 3.5 done so far. See if I make it or not. Later. Welcome to Chris Horner's Corner. As you guys can tell from the intro there of the video, it was a stormy, cold day in Bend, Oregon, February 4th, 2024. Now, why did I show the video to begin with? Well, the whole reason to put the video in there is today's edition here on Chris Horner's Corner. I want to talk about when it's time to call home. Now, yesterday was a crazy day. And my boy Garrett, who does all the editing here at Chris Horner's Corner and Butterfly Effect and Beyond the Coverage, he sent me a text yesterday and he said, "Hey, it's snowing here in Bend, Oregon. You want me to pick you up?" And I said, "No, I'm good. I got the right clothing on. I got good stuff. I'm still warm right now." And as you can tell from the video, it hadn't fully gotten white everywhere. It just gotten where the road's getting a little bit damp. But many times throughout my 25 years of professional racing, and sometimes after my 10 years since then, I've gone on rides and I've met up with people and they've ridden super hard until they've thrown up, or they've dressed their clothing wrong, or they just weren't feeling it that day and they just wouldn't quit. They'd keep pushing. They'd get sick and they'd be on the side of the road and they'd throw up and they'd get back on their bike and they'd continue. And I've had a couple stories where I've seen it with some of the coaching where they kind of encourage that kind of push until you get yourself sick and throw up, or keep pushing through the cold and then get an injury later because you push too hard. So there's times when to push, there's times when not to push. That's what today's video is really about. Now, when it comes to being sick on the bike, there's never a time in training when you want to be sick on the bike and continue riding your bike. That's just going to put you behind the 8 ball. You're going to miss more days of training. When's the time to be sick? Okay, you're on your 100% main objective. You're doing your Tour de France, or whatever similar to it for your Grand Fondo ride, or whatever it happens to be, your big objective. And if that day, if you're coming close to the finish line and, well, you're going to get sick right before you cross the finish line, then you go ahead and push to the limit and you go all the way in there and you go for it. If I'm your coach, I'm telling you, go deep, push hard. And if you get sick right before the line, so what? We'll take tomorrow off, the next day off, and the day after that off, no problem. But in your training, the reason why you don't want to be sick is all the time when I'm training, I'm thinking about how do I get myself better, not for today's ride, but for tomorrow's ride. I'm always thinking about the progression of wanting to be better and better as the week keeps rolling through, and then it gets into the month, and then it starts getting down to the weeks before you get into your main objective. So I don't want anything that's going to come in between myself and my main objective and that will stop my training rides. I don't want to be sick where I need 3 days off or 4 days or 5 days off the bike. I don't want to pull a muscle or a tendon or something that might have to take a week or 2 off the bike, and then you have to start back at zero. So you have to kind of feel those little problems before they come on. If you feel yourself getting sick and that's not your main objective day, maybe it's a time to back off a little bit. Even on yesterday's cold and snowy ride, I was going up one of the only climbs I did on yesterday's ride here around Bend, Oregon. And as I'm coming up through the lake area there's a bit of a climb. It's cold, the road's wet, and getting a little bit of spray and stuff. I'm still warm under my clothing, but I'm starting to get a little fatigued because we're 3 hours into the end of the ride. I'm by myself. I say we, but when I'm out riding, it's always we. I talk to myself as we should go this way, I should go this way, what do you think we should do? I always talk to myself, so that's why it comes out on the camera that way. But I decided the best thing to do is pull over to the side of the road. I'm going to eat my Pop-Tart that's in my back pocket. I'm going to finish out my back pocket, so it's going to be empty, and the bank account's empty after that. But I know I'm 30 minutes from my stop, so I pull over, take a nature break, have my Pop-Tarts, jump back on my bike and start riding, and that's when you guys see the camera there of what I was filming. And shortly after that, that's when my boy Garrett asked me if I want to ride. I said, not at this moment, and I sent him the picture, the little video saying that I'm going to go ahead and try to make it into town, which we posted up on one of the YouTube shorts yesterday. So as the ride continued, because I came into the ride with the right clothing, Thank you, Costelli. You did a fabulous job of making the Alpha jacket. By the way, I put it up here. I'm so proud of it. That was the first time I tried it out because I've been down in SoCal, of course, and that was the first time the weather was so bad, so I was trying the Alpha jacket on. But because I was warm inside, because I had the right bib tights on, because I had the right gloves, the right shoe covers, the right beanie underneath my helmet and stuff, I was still warm even in those conditions. So I knew it wouldn't affect my form in terms of delaying anything on how I progress as I'm starting to get into February month here, because I want to get better and better, because I know, of course, once March comes, we're going to start the butterfly effect videos, and then I'm not going to get to train so much. So I want to come into March peaking, right? So yesterday's ride was all about, can I still get better for tomorrow? Now, I've heard other stories. A friend of mine, MotoGP guy, we're down at Paula and we're riding the motorcycle track. He's giving me all kinds of little details, how to be a better motocross rider and stuff. And then I started talking to his wife, and his wife was telling me about being sick and about pushing really hard on different training rides, to the point to where she'd make herself sick and then push through for another hour or two and stuff. And I said, no, that's not how you do it. You really got to back it off. Just call that day done. If you've pushed yourself to the limit, you're done. If yesterday's ride, and it started snowing, if yesterday's ride is going to become dangerous where I might crash, I'm going to call my boy Garrett and I'm going to have him come pick me up. If it gets too cold and I don't have the right equipment on, I'd call my boy and have him come pick me up. If something happens where it's going to delay my form or cost me missing 4 or 5 days of riding, I'm going to call someone and come pick me up, because I know in the long run I'm going to be faster and better for next week's, and tomorrow's going to continue riding, the next day's going to continue riding, and then the form's just going to keep coming up, where next week you're going to be able to complete your objective of, maybe you failed on yesterday's ride, but a week from now maybe you dominate what was yesterday's ride. So keep that in mind when you're really out there training, to stay focused, but understand when to say when, right? We've all heard about the drinking commercials, when to say when, but it's the same for your training. Don't let things disrupt your training. If you're out there and you're doing a group ride and you're not feeling it that day, call it, turn around, tell your buddy, see you later. Sorry, I don't have the legs today to keep up with you guys today. I'm going to do a little bit easier, but I'll be better tomorrow, and I'll be for sure better a week from now to be able to go out with your group and then even perform better. And many times, like I said, another story is many times I've gone through with training camps in early January, and I remember one specifically with Peter Van Petegem, where I was riding with Lotto Destiny or Lotto Sudal, whatever they were called that year, and Peter Van Petegem was my teammate. Now, this guy, world-class athlete, he wins classic races left and right during his career, and it's January. January means it's right after the Christmas time in the United States and everywhere else in the world, so I always take Christmas off. I take about 3 weeks off. I train a few days early in January, and then I jump on the plane. I fly over to do the presentation for Lotto, and then we fly over to Spain to start our training camp there in Denia. Now, as we're going up one of these climbs, Peter Van Petegem's cell phone rings, and he's sitting on the cell phone chatting, and I'm back there maxed out like a mother. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, these guys are above my ability. Peter Van Petegem, I'm sure he'll tell you he trained through November, December. He's training hard now early January, because the classics, his big time of the season is always the classics and the Road World Championships at the finish of the season. So he's riding 100%. When his phone rings, though, and he picks it up and starts answering, and I'm maxed out at the back of the group, I know it's time for me to call it quits. So I just drop off the pace. And then every day of the training rides after that with Lotto, I'd learn to just do an hour, maybe 2 hours with the group, and then quietly go to the back of the group, drop off to the back of the car there, grab a Coke and some snacks, and then as soon as the next right or left turn comes, I make a right or I make a left and stage exit out of there. And I do the next few training rides on my own for that whole week. But by the time the week finishes, once we start rounding out that 10-day training camp, all of a sudden I'm capable of staying with the front riders all the way for the whole 6-hour training ride. But when you're trying to push something and you know you're over your limit and you know it's not healthy for you, then you always should know at that point in time, back the gas down, call a friend to come pick you up, Uber it if you have to. I had a good friend of mine, he always rode expensive tubular tires, and if he flatted, he just said, hey, I call Uber, it's no big deal. So don't be afraid to call Uber, don't be afraid to have your friend call. And certainly, if you're going to ride out in a day like yesterday, make sure you got the right equipment on, which I did. So I did finish yesterday's ride for a 90-mile ride here in Bend, Oregon on a snowy, cold day that was about 35 degrees almost the whole time. So make sure you guys like and subscribe. I hope this helps you guys out. I'll bring you some more information later. Catch you on the next edition real soon. James, jacket passed the test, man. Thanks. Check that out. Oh yeah, thermal, baby. Thermal Castelli. Appreciate it. Catch you on the warm side. Later.